5 in the morning. The world's still asleep. Your bed feels like a warm hug from the universe itself. And yet, there's this one guy who's already up, cold water splashed on his face, lacing up his shoes while you're drooling on your pillow. Fast forward 5 years, he's running companies, you're still hitting snooze. What happened? Did he find a magic lamp? Sell his soul? Nope. He found something way simpler, way more powerful. And honestly, kind of annoying because it actually works. This is the 5 a.m. secret that transformed broke, directionless men into disciplined powerhouses. And no, this isn't some hustle culture nonsense where you pretend coffee is a personality trait. This is ancient Stoic wisdom meeting modern reality. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll either set that alarm or admit you're choosing to stay average. Your call. Let's get one thing straight right now. Waking up at 5 a.m. doesn't magically deposit money into your bank account. I know, shocker. But what it does do is rewire your brain's entire operating system. It trains you to do hard things when you don't feel like it. And that, my friend, is the actual cheat code to life. The Stoics knew this thousands of years ago. Marcus Aurelius, literal emperor of Rome, had every reason to stay in bed. Gold sheets, servants, probably a massage team on standby. But every morning he dragged himself up and wrote in his journal about discipline, duty, and not being a lazy piece of work. If an emperor can do it, so can you, Netflix subscriber. Let's get one thing straight right now. Waking up at 5 a.m. doesn't magically deposit money into your bank account. I know, shocker. But what it does do is rewire your brain's entire operating system. It trains you to do hard things when you don't feel like it. And that, my friend, is the actual cheat code to life. The Stoics knew this thousands of years ago. Marcus Aurelius, literal emperor of Rome, had every reason to stay in bed. Gold sheets, servants, probably a massage team on standby. But every morning he dragged himself up and wrote in his journal about discipline, duty, and not being a lazy piece of work. If an emperor can do it, so can you, Netflix subscriber. Section 1. The biological warfare your brain wages against you. Here's what nobody tells you about that 5 a.m. alarm. It's not just about waking up early. It's about winning the first battle of the day against the most manipulative opponent you'll ever face, your own brain. Your brain at 5 a.m. is basically a used car salesman. Just 5 more minutes, it whispers. You deserve rest. Sleep is self-care. And you know what? It's technically right. But here's the thing Epictetus would slap you awake for. Your brain doesn't want what's good for you. It wants what's easy for you. See, your prefrontal cortex, the part that makes rational decisions, is basically offline at 5 a.m. Meanwhile, your limbic system, the toddler part of your brain that just wants ice cream and naps, is running the show. When you hit that alarm and actually get up, you're literally overriding millions of years of evolution that programmed you to conserve energy. You're telling your primitive brain, yeah, I know you want to stay in this cave, but we've got empires to build, buddy. The Stoics called this amor fati, love of fate. Not just accepting hard things, but choosing them. When you choose to get up at 5 a.m., you're not just waking up, you're practicing voluntary discomfort. You're building what the ancients called proheresis, the power of choice. And every single morning you win that battle, you're literally rewiring neural pathways. Your brain starts to understand, oh, we're actually doing hard things now. Cool, cool. Let me adjust my expectations. But wait, because just waking up early without a plan is like buying a gym membership and never going. You're awake, congratulations. Now what? This is where most people screw it up, and honestly, where the real magic actually begins. That first hour after you wake up, that's not just time, that's premium real estate in your day. It's when your willpower tank is full, your discipline muscle is fresh, and the world hasn't started throwing garbage at you yet. No emails, no notifications, no one asking you where the TV remote is. Just you and the raw potential of a new day. The Stoics had a word for this, euthymia, which basically means tranquility and clarity of mind. And guess what? You can't buy it. You can't download it. You can only create it by protecting your mornings like a medieval fortress. Here's what the broke version of you does with that hour. scrolls social media, checks the news, maybe watches some videos, essentially letting other people's priorities colonize your brain before you've even brushed your teeth. Here's what the rich and disciplined version does. Owns it completely. Maybe it's meditation, maybe it's journaling, maybe it's reading philosophy, maybe it's working out. Doesn't matter. What matters is that you choose. Not your phone, not the algorithm. You. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. And nowhere is this more true than in the morning. That hour between 5 and 6 a.m., while everyone else is unconscious, you're essentially getting a 25th hour in your day. Do that every day for a year, and you've got 15 extra days of focused, undistracted time. That's 2 whole weeks where you could write a book, build a business, or transform your body, and all you had to do was argue with your alarm clock." But here's the kicker. It's not really about the hour itself. It's about the identity you're building. Every morning at 5 a.m., you're telling yourself, "I am the kind of person who does what they say they'll do. I am the kind of person who controls their day instead of being controlled by it." That's not just productivity. That's philosophy in action. That's Stoicism with a pulse. Now, you might be thinking, cool story, but I've tried this before and I was exhausted and miserable and gave up after 3 days. Yeah, I bet you did, because you made the same mistake everyone makes. You focused on waking up instead of what actually matters. Let me explain.
Here's a truth bomb that's going to mess with your head. Discipline isn't about forcing yourself to do things you hate. That's just slow-motion torture with motivational quotes. Real discipline, Stoic discipline, is about designing your life so that doing the right thing becomes easier than doing the wrong thing. It's about removing friction from good habits and adding friction to bad ones. The poor man tries to wake up at 5 a.m. while his phone is on his nightstand, charging within arm's reach, Instagram already loaded, alarm set to a gentle harp sound. That's not a morning routine. That's a game of Russian roulette with your discipline. The disciplined man? Phone's in another room. Alarm sounds like an air raid siren. Gym clothes are laid out. Water bottles ready. He's basically building a slide that leads directly from bed to productive behavior. No willpower required. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, 'I have to go to work,' as a human being." Notice he didn't say, "I have to go to work because I need money or because my boss will yell at me." He said, "as a human being." This is about identity. This is about living up to your nature. Humans aren't meant to sleep through the best hours of the day. We're meant to create, to build, to grow. But here's where it gets interesting. The Stoics also weren't idiots. They understood rest. Seneca took naps. Marcus Aurelius knew when to delegate. The difference is they rested intentionally, not as a default state. They understood that discipline without wisdom is just stubbornness. So yeah, wake up at 5 a.m., but also go to bed at 9 p.m. Revolutionary concept, I know. All right, so you're waking up, you're using that golden hour, you're building systems. Great. But here's where most people plateau and wonder why their life isn't transforming. They're missing the secret ingredient that turns all of this from a cute morning routine into an actual life-changing philosophy.
Let's talk about what poor really means, because it's not about your bank account, it's about your mindset. The poverty mindset says, "I'll start when? I'll start when I have more time. I'll start when I feel motivated. I'll start when the conditions are perfect." This person is rich in excuses, poor in results. They're waiting for life to happen to them instead of making life happen through them. The Stoic mindset? Completely different game. It says, "I'll start now with what I have where I am." No perfect conditions, no ideal circumstances, just action. Epictetus was born a slave, literally owned by another human being. He had every excuse in the world to give up, to blame his circumstances, to wait for freedom before starting to live philosophically. But he didn't. He used his chains to forge mental freedom. He became one of the most influential philosophers in history while legally being property. That's the 5 a.m. secret in its purest form. It's not about the time. It's about refusing to let circumstances dictate your choices. When you wake up at 5 a.m., despite being tired, despite it being dark, despite your bed being comfortable, You're practicing the exact same muscle Epictetus used to transcend slavery. You're saying, external conditions don't control me. I control me. The poor man blames his alarm clock. The powerful man thanks it for the opportunity to practice discipline. The poor man says, I'm not a morning person. The powerful man says, I wasn't a morning person until I decided to become one. See the difference? One is ruled by identity, the other is creating it. But let's get real for a second, because knowing all this intellectually and actually doing it are two very different things. And this is where the rubber meets the road, where philosophy becomes practical, where ancient wisdom meets your very modern, very stubborn brain.
Here's something they don't teach you in those productivity courses. The first 72 hours of any new habit are a complete lie. Your brain is basically in shock. Wait, we're doing what now? At 5 a.m.? Is this a prank? It's going to throw everything at you. Headaches, fatigue, mood swings, sudden memories of how comfortable your bed is. This is normal. This is expected. This is your brain's last-ditch effort to maintain the status quo. The Stoics called this the discipline of assent, choosing which impressions to agree with. Your brain sends you the impression, this is horrible, go back to bed. You have a choice, assent or refuse. The poor man assents immediately, then wonders why his life never changes. The disciplined man refuses, recognizes it as brain propaganda, and keeps moving. But here's the beautiful part. After 72 hours, something shifts. Your body starts adjusting. Your brain realizes you're serious. The rebellion quiets down. By day 4 or 5, 5 a.m. doesn't feel like violence anymore. By week 2, it feels normal. By week 4, you'll actually start waking up before the alarm. I'm not even kidding. Your body's circadian rhythm is incredibly adaptable when you're consistent. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That first week of 5 a.m. wake-ups, that's not the obstacle, that's the training. That's where you build the mental calluses that make everything else in life easier. Now here's where this gets really interesting, because we've been talking about discipline like it's this individual thing, this solo journey. But the Stoics knew something crucial about human nature that modern psychology is only now confirming.
Let's address the elephant in the room. People are going to think you're weird. Your friends will make jokes. Oh, look, Mr. 5 a.m. is here. Did you also meal prep and write in your gratitude journal? Yes, actually, I did. And I'll be financially free while you're complaining about Monday mornings for the next 40 years. But thanks for asking. Here's what's really happening. Crabs in a bucket. When one crab tries to climb out, the others pull it back down. Not because they're evil, but because your success makes them uncomfortable with their own choices. When you wake up at 5 a.m. and start building discipline, you're holding up a mirror to everyone who's still hitting snooze, and mirrors are uncomfortable. Epictetus taught, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. The moment you start caring more about other people's opinions than your own growth, you're done. You've handed them the remote control to your life. The Stoics were obsessed with the concept of oikesis, the natural affinity to take care of yourself first before extending to others. You can't help anyone from a position of undisciplined weakness. But here's the plot twist. After a few months of 5 a.m. wake-ups, those same people making jokes, they'll start asking for advice. How do you have so much energy? How did you write a book while working full-time? How are you so disciplined? And you'll smile and say, I just wake up a little earlier, knowing full well that a little earlier contains an entire philosophical transformation they can't see yet. So you've survived the social pressure, you've made it past the first brutal week, and you're starting to feel like maybe, just maybe, this 5 a.m. thing isn't complete insanity. But now comes the question everyone's actually wondering about. How does waking up early actually translate to money, success, and power? Because, let's be honest, philosophy is great, but rent is due.
Here's the thing about wealth that broke people don't understand. It's not about one big score.
It's about tiny advantages compounded over time. Warren Buffett didn't get rich overnight. He got rich by making slightly better decisions than everyone else, consistently, for 60 years. And guess what? He wakes up early. Shocker. When you wake up at 5 a.m., you're not just getting an extra hour, you're getting the best hour. Your willpower is highest, your creativity is peak, your ability to focus is superhuman compared to 3 p.m. when you're in a post-lunch coma wondering why you exist. This is when you work on the things that actually move the needle, not the busy work, not the emails, but the real work. The Stoics called this ergon, your essential work, your purpose. Let's do the math, because numbers don't lie. One focused hour at 5 a.m. is worth probably 3 scattered hours later in the day. That's 365 hours a year, which is over 15 full days of peak productivity. In 5 years, that's 75 extra days of your absolute best work. That's enough time to build a side business, write multiple books, learn a valuable skill, or completely transform your career. And all you had to do was set an alarm. But here's where it gets deeper. Seneca wrote about euthymia, which we touched on earlier, but let's really break it down. It means tranquility of mind, knowing what you want and why you want it. When you control your mornings, you create space for this kind of clarity. You're not reactive, you're not scattered, you're not letting the chaos of the world dictate your mental state. You're proactive, you're intentional. And intentional people make more money because they're not wasting energy on distractions. The poor man wakes up whenever, checks his phone immediately, gets angry at the news, stressed about emails, and burns through his mental energy before breakfast. He's in survival mode all day. The disciplined man wakes up at 5 a.m., protects his mental space, does his most important work first, and enters the rest of his day from a position of strength. One is playing defense, the other is playing offense. Guess which one builds wealth? All right, but let's get even more tactical here, because theory is cute, but execution is everything. What exactly should you be doing in that 5 a.m. hour that actually creates results? Because I see a lot of people waking up early just to scroll TikTok in the dark, which is not exactly what Marcus Aurelius had in mind.
Let me give you the actual blueprint, the real sequence that transforms 5 a.m. from suffering to superpower. This isn't some guru nonsense. This is pulled straight from Stoic practices that have worked for literal millennia. First, cold exposure. Before you roll your eyes, hear me out. The Stoics were huge on voluntary discomfort. Seneca took cold baths in winter. Why? Because it trains your nervous system to stay calm under stress. When you splash cold water on your face or take a cold shower at 5 a.m., you're doing 2 things. 1, shocking your body awake better than any coffee, and 2, practicing the art of doing hard things immediately. Your brain learns, oh, we're starting the day by doing something uncomfortable on purpose? All right, I guess we're built different now. Second, movement. Doesn't have to be a full workout, but get your body moving. The Stoics walked a lot. Aristotle taught while walking. Movement activates your brain, gets blood flowing, and breaks you out of that groggy state. Even 10 minutes of stretching or a short walk around your block completely changes your neurochemistry. You're literally telling your body, we're alive, we're active, we're ready. Third, meditation or contemplation. Marcus Aurelius journaled every morning. He'd write reminders to himself about virtue, about his principles, about not being a jerk even though he had unlimited power. You don't need to write a book, just 3 to 5 minutes of sitting with your thoughts, planning your day, or reflecting on your principles. What kind of person do you want to be today? What's your intention? This isn't woo-woo. This is setting your operating system before the world tries to install its viruses. Fourth, learning. Read something that makes you better. Philosophy, history, biography, technical skills, doesn't matter as long as it's input that improves you. 15 minutes of reading every morning is 91 hours a year, which is about 20 to 30 books depending on speed. Show me someone who reads 20 books a year, and I'll show you someone who's going to lap their competition in knowledge and wisdom. Fifth, the one thing. This is where the magic happens. After you've woken up your body and mind, you tackle the single most important task of your day. Not the urgent stuff, not the easy stuff, the important stuff. The thing that if you did nothing else today would still move your life forward. For a broke person trying to build wealth, this might be working on a business plan, learning a high-income skill, creating content, building a portfolio, whatever actually creates value. 1 hour of focused work on your one thing every single morning, and in a year, you'll be unrecognizable. The beauty of this stack is that it builds momentum. Each piece feeds into the next. The cold exposure gives you energy from movement. The movement primes your brain for meditation. The meditation clarifies what you should learn. The learning informs your one thing. It's a system, not a random collection of habits. And systems are what separate the disciplined from the delusional. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds great, but what about when life gets in the way? What about when I travel or get sick or have a newborn baby or insert excuse here? And this is where we separate the Stoic practicers from the Stoic pretenders. Here's a mind bender for you. True discipline is actually incredibly flexible. Sounds contradictory, right? But stick with me. The Stoics weren't robots. They understood that life is unpredictable, that circumstances change, that sometimes you're going to get hit with chaos you didn't see coming. Marcus Aurelius ran an empire during a plague and multiple wars. You think he woke up at the exact same time every single day in the exact same way? Of course not. The key is this. You're disciplined about the principle, flexible about the execution. The principle is, I own my mornings. I do hard things first. I invest in myself before the world makes demands. The execution, that can adapt. Traveling and there's a time zone change? Wake up at the local equivalent of 5 a.m. Have a newborn and you were up at 3 a.m.? Don't be an idiot, get your sleep. But the second that baby starts sleeping through the night, you're back on it. Epictetus taught the concept of dichotomy of control. Some things are up to you, some things aren't. Whether you wake up at exactly 5 a.m., not always up to you. Whether you maintain the discipline of starting your day intentionally, completely up to you. The broke mindset looks for reasons why the system doesn't work. The disciplined mindset adapts the system to work within reality. I've seen people use "I have kids" as an excuse for zero discipline. I've also seen people with kids who wake up at 4:30 a.m. to get their hour in before chaos erupts. Same circumstances, different choices. The Stoics would say those circumstances are preferred indifference. Yeah, it'd be nice if you didn't have obstacles, but obstacles don't excuse you from living according to your principles. Here's the real test. Can you maintain your discipline when it's inconvenient, when you're tired, when you don't feel like it, when no one's watching? That's where boys become men, where pretenders become practitioners. The alarm goes off at 5 a.m. on a Saturday and you have zero obligations. Do you still get up? If yes, you're building real discipline. If no, you're just playing dress up with someone else's routine. But let's talk about the dark side for a minute, because I'd be lying if I said this was all sunshine and productivity. There's a shadow element to the 5 a.m. life that nobody warns you about, and if you're not ready for it, it'll sabotage everything. Here's what happens when you start waking up at 5 a.m. and taking your life seriously. You start living on a different frequency than most people. While your friends are out until midnight, you're in bed by 9 p.m. While everyone's sleeping in on weekends, you're already 3 hours into productive work. While people are complaining about having no time, you're quietly building an empire in the margins. This creates isolation. Not the bad kind necessarily, but definitely a separation. Your social life will take a hit. Some friendships will fade. People will stop inviting you to things because you'll probably just say no anyway. And you know what? They're probably right, because that late-night hangout has a cost. It costs you tomorrow's 5 a.m. session, which costs you momentum, which costs you progress. The Stoics were very aware of this. Seneca wrote extensively about choosing your associations carefully, about how we become like the people we spend time with. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful man in the world, often felt alone because he held himself to different standards. The discipline tax is real. You pay it in social convenience. But here's the thing. You're not losing friends. You're losing people who were never really aligned with where you're going anyway. And you're gaining something far more valuable, self-respect. Every morning you wake up at 5 a.m., you're keeping a promise to yourself.
And people who can't keep promises to themselves can't keep promises to anyone else. They're unreliable at a core level. The truly disciplined person understands that some seasons of life require intense focus. Maybe for 6 months, for a year, you're in monk mode. Early mornings, head down, building. Your social life becomes strategic, not reactive. You hang out with people who add value, who inspire you, who are also building. Everyone else, you love them from a distance, but you don't let them pull you off course. This isn't being antisocial, this is being selective. The Stoics called it oikonomia, proper management of your household, your life, your time. Your time is the only non-renewable resource you have. Spending it unconsciously is the ultimate poverty, regardless of what's in your bank account. All right, we're going deep now, because there's a physiological transformation happening in your body and brain when you consistently wake up at 5 a.m. that most people never experience. And understanding this science makes the philosophy even more powerful.
Let's get nerdy for a second, because this is fascinating. When you wake up at 5 a.m. consistently, you're not just changing your schedule, you're literally rewiring your brain's neural pathways and resetting your hormonal systems. Your body releases cortisol naturally around 4 to 6 a.m. to wake you up. When you fight this and sleep until 8 or 9 a.m., you're working against your biology. When you align with it and wake at 5 a.m., you're riding a natural wave of alertness. Here's what happens. Your brain starts producing more dopamine in response to achieving your 5 a.m. goal. Every single morning you win that battle, your brain gets a little hit of "we did it" juice. This creates a positive feedback loop. You're literally training your brain to crave discipline. After a few weeks, waking up early doesn't feel like punishment, it feels like winning, because neurologically it is. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for executive function, decision-making, and impulse control, actually strengthens when you consistently do hard things. It's like a muscle. Every time you override your limbic system's protests and get out of bed anyway, you're doing a rep. Your brain adapts. It builds capacity. You become someone who can do hard things in other areas of life too, because you've been training that neural pathway every single morning. Then there's adenosine, the chemical that builds up in your brain throughout the day, making you tired. When you wake up at 5 a.m., you clear it out earlier. Your peak productivity window shifts. You're crushing tasks while everyone else is hitting their first wave of afternoon fatigue. You're already done with your most important work before they finish their second cup of coffee. The Stoics didn't know about neuroscience, but they understood something fundamental. Repeated action creates character. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. He was describing neuroplasticity before neuroscience existed. Your brain physically changes based on what you do consistently. Wake up at 5 a.m. for 6 months, and your brain becomes the brain of a disciplined person. It's not willpower anymore, it's just who you are. Now, here's where this gets really practical, because I can already hear some of you saying, "Cool science, bro, but I tried this for a week and felt like death." Yeah, because you made critical mistakes that sabotaged the whole thing. Let me show you where everyone screws this up. Sin number 1. You don't actually go to bed early. This is the big one. You can't wake up at 5 a.m. if you're going to bed at 1 a.m., unless you're cool with sleep deprivation and eventual mental breakdown. The math is simple. Adults need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. If you want to wake at 5 a.m., you need to be asleep by 9 or 10 p.m., not in bed scrolling, not winding down, actually asleep. The Stoics were big on virtue, and wisdom is a virtue. Being wise enough to get adequate sleep is non-negotiable. Sin number 2. You rely on motivation instead of systems. Motivation is a moody girlfriend. Sometimes she's there, usually she's not. Systems don't care about your feelings. Your alarm goes off, you get up. End of story. No negotiation. No, how do I feel today? The decision was made yesterday when you set the alarm. Epictetus would say you're confusing things that are up to you with things that aren't. Your feelings aren't up to you. Your actions are. Sin number 3. You make it too comfortable to stay in bed. If your bedroom is a cozy paradise with blackout curtains, perfect temperature, and a mattress that feels like sleeping on a cloud, congratulations, you've created the perfect trap. The disciplined person makes their bedroom slightly less comfortable, cooler temperature, less perfect darkness, maybe even putting the alarm across the room so you have to get up to turn it off. Add friction to bad habits, remove friction from good ones. Sin number 4, you have no compelling reason. If your only reason for waking up early is, "I heard it's good," you're done before you start. You need a reason that matters to you. For some people, it's financial freedom. For others, it's being present for their kids. For some, it's proving to themselves they're not weak. Whatever it is, it needs to be powerful enough to override the comfort of your bed. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning that he was getting up to do the work of a human being. What's your work? Sin number 5. You try to change everything at once. You decide you're going to wake up at 5 a.m., work out for an hour, meditate for 30 minutes, read for an hour, journal, meal prep, and learn a new language. By day 3, you're exhausted and hate your life. Start with just waking up at 5 a.m. That's it. Master that. Then add one thing, then another. Build gradually. The Stoics practiced incremental improvement, not dramatic overhauls that collapse under their own weight. Sin number 6, you don't track it. What gets measured gets managed. Keep a simple calendar and mark every day you successfully wake up at 5 a.m. Watch the chain of X's grow. This visual feedback is powerful. It's called the Seinfeld method. Don't break the chain. After 2 weeks of consistent X's, you won't want to break the streak. Your brain will protect it. Sin number 7. You quit the first time it gets hard. This is the ultimate sin. You have one bad morning or one bad week, and you decide this isn't for me. The Stoics would laugh at you. Seneca said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." That hard morning, that's not failure, that's training. Get back up. The only way you actually fail is if you quit trying. So we've covered the biology, the psychology, the systems, and the mistakes. But now we're going to go somewhere most productivity bros won't touch with a 10-foot pole, the spiritual dimension of this whole thing. Because waking up at 5 a.m. isn't just about getting more done, it's about becoming someone completely different. And that transformation, that's where the real wealth lives.
Here's what nobody tells you about discipline. It's not about what you do. It's about who you become. Every single morning you wake up at 5 a.m., you're casting a vote for a new identity. You're saying, "I'm the kind of person who keeps commitments to themselves. I'm the kind of person who does hard things. I'm the kind of person who controls their life instead of being controlled by it." The Stoics understood this at a deep level. They didn't practice philosophy as an intellectual exercise. They practiced it as identity construction. Marcus Aurelius didn't journal about being a good emperor. He journaled to become a good emperor. Every morning, he reminded himself of his principles, not because he might forget them, but because repetition creates character. James Clear talks about identity-based habits in modern terms, but the Stoics were doing this 2,000 years ago. They called it ascesis, spiritual exercise, the deliberate practice of virtue until it becomes your nature. When you wake up at 5 a.m. every day for 6 months, you don't just have a habit, you have a new identity. You're not someone trying to be disciplined anymore. You are disciplined. That's just who you are now. And here's where it gets powerful. Identity drives behavior way more effectively than goals. Goals are external and temporary. You hit them or you don't. Then what? Identity is internal and permanent. Someone with the goal to make $1 million might hustle until they hit it, then lose motivation. Someone with the identity of "I am a wealthy creator" will keep building indefinitely because that's just what they do. It's not about the money, it's about being aligned with who they are. Poor people have poor identities, not poor bank accounts, poor self-concepts. I'm just not a morning person. I'm not good with money. I'm not disciplined. These are identity statements, and your brain will move heaven and earth to prove them true. Rich people, and I mean rich in every sense, not just financially, have rich identities. I am someone who invests in myself. I am someone who shows up. I am someone who finishes what they start. The 5 a.m. practice is identity construction. Every morning is a brick. You're building a cathedral of self-trust. And eventually, people can sense it. They can feel that you're different. You carry yourself differently. You speak differently. You make decisions differently because you fundamentally changed who you are at a neurological and spiritual level. But let's get uncomfortable for a moment because there's a question lurking under all of this that we need to address head-on. What if you do all of this and still don't get rich? What if you wake up at 5 a.m. for a year and your business fails? Or you don't get the promotion? Or life just punches you in the face anyway? Does that mean this was all pointless?
Here's where we separate Stoic philosophy from toxic hustle culture. Hustle culture says, wake up early, grind harder than everyone else, and you'll get rich. If you're not rich, you didn't grind hard enough. It's a lie wrapped in a half-truth. Yes, discipline increases your odds of financial success, but the Stoics knew something deeper. True wealth isn't about external outcomes, it's about internal freedom. Seneca was one of the richest men in Rome, but he wrote extensively about how wealth means nothing if you're enslaved to wanting more. He practiced poverty regularly, eating simple food, sleeping on a hard bed, to prove to himself he didn't need luxury. The point wasn't to reject wealth, the point was to not be controlled by it. He wanted to be able to lose everything and still be fine because his wealth was internal. When you wake up at 5 a.m. and build discipline, you're building a different kind of wealth. You're building the wealth of self-control, the wealth of freedom from your own weaknesses, the wealth of knowing you can handle hard things. This kind of wealth can never be taken from you. The market can crash, your business can fail, you can lose every dollar, but you can't lose the person you've become through discipline. Epictetus said it best. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. When you're disciplined, your wants decrease. You don't need the latest thing to feel good about yourself. You don't need external validation to know you're valuable. You don't need comfort to be happy. You've trained yourself to be content while still striving for more. That's the paradox. You want less, so you're free to achieve more. The broke person is enslaved to their desires. They want the fancy car they can't afford, the lifestyle they haven't earned, the respect they haven't built. They're miserable because they're constantly comparing their reality to their fantasies. The disciplined person? They're free. They wake up at 5 a.m. not because they hate their life and need to escape it, but because they love their life and want to build it intentionally. So yeah, wake up at 5 a.m., build your discipline, work on your wealth, but do it from a place of internal richness, not external desperation. Do it because you're already wealthy in the ways that matter, and now you're just expressing that wealth in the physical world. That's the Stoic path. That's the path from poor to powerful. Now let's talk about something that'll separate you from 99% of people who try this, because most people wake up at 5 a.m. for a few months, season results, and then what? They plateau. They get comfortable. They stop growing. But the real players, they understand something crucial about discipline that turns it from a phase into a legacy.
Simon Sinek talks about finite versus infinite games. Finite games have a clear endpoint. You win or lose, then it's over. Infinite games have no endpoint. You just keep playing, getting better, evolving. Most people treat discipline like a finite game. I'll wake up at 5 a.m. until I achieve X goal, then I can relax. Wrong. That's not discipline, that's just temporary discomfort tolerance. The Stoics played the infinite game. Marcus Aurelius was emperor for nearly 20 years. He could have stopped journaling, stopped practicing philosophy, stopped being disciplined at any point. He was literally the most powerful man alive. Who would stop him? But he didn't stop because he understood that discipline isn't a means to an end. Discipline is the end. The practice is the point. When you wake up at 5 a.m. today, it doesn't make tomorrow easier. Tomorrow's alarm is just as early. Tomorrow's bed is just as comfortable. Tomorrow's brain will have just as many excuses. The only thing that's different is you've proven to yourself one more time that you can do it. You're building a reservoir of self-trust that you can draw from for the rest of your life. This is why disciplined people seem to have an unfair advantage. They do. They're playing a completely different game than everyone else. While others are asking, when can I stop? They're asking, how can I level up? While others are seeking the minimum effective dose, they're seeking excellence for its own sake. While others are trying to reach a finish line, they're building a legacy. Think about it. The wealthiest, most powerful, most accomplished people in history didn't stop being disciplined when they made it. If anything, they got more disciplined because they understood that who you are is more important than what you have. Your character is your true wealth. Your discipline is your true power. And these things require constant cultivation. The 5 a.m. wake-up isn't preparation for your real life. It is your real life. How you do anything is how you do everything. If you can't discipline yourself to get out of bed, how are you going to discipline yourself to build a business, to maintain relationships, to stay healthy, to raise kids? The alarm clock is just the training ground. Life is the actual game. All right, we're getting close to the end here. But before we wrap this up, I need to address the elephant in the room that's probably been nagging at some of you this whole time. What about rest? What about balance? What about not being some robotic productivity machine? Valid questions. Let's talk about it. Every morning you wake up at 5 a.m., you're not just improving your own life. You're setting an example. Your kids are watching. Your partner is watching. Your coworkers notice when you're sharper, more focused, more capable. Your friends see you changing. You're not just building a personal practice, you're creating a ripple effect that extends far beyond yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote Meditations never intending anyone else to read it. It was his private journal. But because he disciplined himself to write every morning, to think clearly, to practice philosophy, we have one of the most influential books in human history. His private discipline became public legacy. That's how it works. You think you're just waking up early for yourself, but you're actually becoming the kind of person who changes the world around them. Think about the people who've influenced you most. Were they the ones who talked about discipline or the ones who lived it? Actions create legacy, not words. When you wake up at 5 a.m. for a year straight, people notice. They don't need you to post about it on social media. They can sense it. You become the person people think of when they need someone reliable, capable, strong. That reputation, that's wealth you can't buy. The Stoics were obsessed with legacy, but not in the way you might think. They didn't want to be remembered for being rich or powerful. They wanted to be remembered for being virtuous, for living well, for making the world a little better through their example. Epictetus was a slave who became a teacher. His legacy? Thousands of years later, people still study his teachings. That's the power of disciplined living. When you wake up at 5 a.m. and build discipline, you're joining a lineage that stretches back thousands of years. You're part of a tradition of people who refused to be average, who chose the hard path, who lived intentionally. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, and now you. Different century, same principles. Different challenges, same response. Discipline. Your great-great-grandchildren might never know your name, but if you live with discipline, if you build character, if you show them through your example what it means to be strong, that influence will ripple forward in ways you can't even imagine. The family culture you create by waking up early and working hard, that becomes their normal. The standards you set, those become their baseline. You're not just changing your life, you're changing your bloodline. So, here we are. At the end of this journey, we've talked about neuroscience and philosophy, systems and spirituality, wealth and legacy. But now comes the moment of truth, the moment where you actually have to decide, are you going to do this, or are you going to go back to hitting snooze and wondering why your life never changes? I'm going to level with you. Most of you watching this aren't going to do it. You're going to feel inspired right now. You're going to set your alarm for 5 a.m. tomorrow. You might even wake up for a few days. But by next week, you'll be back in your old patterns, telling yourself comforting lies about how it just wasn't for you, or you need to find what works for you. And you know what? That's fine, because discipline isn't for everyone. Not everyone wants to be excellent. Not everyone wants to be powerful. Not everyone wants to be free. Some people are genuinely comfortable being average, and there's no shame in that. The world needs average people. Someone has to fill those roles. But if you're still watching, if you're still here, There's a part of you that knows you're meant for more. There's a part of you that's tired of your own excuses. There's a part of you that sees the gap between who you are and who you could be, and that gap is killing you slowly. The Stoics would tell you this: you already know what you need to do. Deep down, underneath all the rationalizations and excuses and fear, you know. You need to wake up. You need to take control. You need to stop letting life happen to you and start making it happen through you. The question isn't what you need to do. The question is, will you do it? Epictetus said, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?" That question is haunting. How long? How many more years of mediocrity? How many more mornings wasted? How many more conversations will you complain about not having time while scrolling social media for 2 hours? How many more versions of yourself are you going to bury before you finally become who you're meant to be? The alarm is going to go off tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. That's a fact. The only question is, are you going to answer it? Are you going to get up and start building the life you actually want? Or are you going to hit snooze and prove to yourself one more time that you can't be trusted, that you're weak, that you're not serious? Because here's the thing: you can't negotiate with reality. You can't wish your way to discipline. You can't think your way to power. You can only act your way there. One morning at a time, one choice at a time, one small victory over yourself at a time. And those victories compound, they build, they create momentum, until one day you look back and realize you're not the same person anymore. You're someone who does what they say they'll do. You're someone who keeps promises to themselves. You're someone who's in control. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to close this video, you're going to go about your day, and at some point tonight, you're going to have to make a choice. Are you going to set that alarm for 5 a.m.? And more importantly, when it goes off tomorrow, are you going to get up? This isn't about motivation. This isn't about inspiration. This is about a decision. Right now. Not tomorrow, not Monday, not when you feel ready. Right now. Who are you going to be? The poor man says, "I'll try." The powerful man says, "I'll do." The poor man looks for reasons it won't work. The powerful man makes it work regardless of reasons. The poor man waits for perfect conditions. The powerful man creates conditions through discipline. Marcus Aurelius, on his deathbed, didn't regret the mornings he woke up early and worked hard. He regretted nothing, because he lived with discipline and purpose. When your time comes, when you look back at your life, what are you going to see? A collection of excuses and wasted potential, or a legacy of discipline, of growth, of becoming everything you were capable of becoming? The choice is yours. It always has been. The Stoics knew this truth that most people never accept. You are exactly where your choices have led you. You want a different life? Make different choices, starting tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. Set the alarm, put your phone across the room, lay out your clothes, decide who you're going to be. And when that alarm goes off, don't think, don't negotiate, don't bargain, just move. Get up, start your day, take control, and do it again the next day, and the next, and the next, until discipline isn't something you do, it's just who you are. This is the 5 a.m. secret that made poor men powerful, not because of the time, not because of some magic hour, but because waking up at 5 a.m. is a daily practice in becoming someone who keeps their word, who does hard things, who lives with intention and purpose. And that person becomes unstoppable. So the question isn't whether this works. The question is, are you going to work it? The alarm's set. Your move. If this hit you where it needed to, drop a comment below telling me what time you're waking up tomorrow. Lock yourself in publicly. Make it real. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who's been stuck, someone who keeps talking about changing but never does, send them this video. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone is show them what's possible. Subscribe if you want more truth about discipline, stoicism, and building a life that actually means something. Hit that bell so you don't miss the next one, because this channel isn't about comfort, it's about transformation. And transformation requires you to show up every single day. See you tomorrow morning at 5 a.m.